The morning sun cast long shadows across Naval Base Coronado as Lieutenant Sarah Chun adjusted her gear one final time. At 26, she stood barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, her compact frame often mistaken for weakness by those who didn't know better. Today would be different. Today, she would prove that size meant nothing when skill and determination were everything. Sarah had spent the last 3 years fighting for this moment. Every push-up, every mile run, every combat simulation had led to this day when she would attempt the Navy SEAL qualification trials. The statistics were brutal. Less than 20% of candidates made it through the initial phases, and no woman had ever completed the full program successfully. The base buzzed with unusual activity as word spread about the female candidate attempting SEAL training. Whispers followed her wherever she walked, ranging from supportive murmurs to outright skepticism. Some sailors openly placed bets on how long she would last. Others simply shook their heads, convinced this was nothing more than a political stunt. General Marcus Hayes had made his position crystal clear during a morning briefing with his senior staff. A decorated Vietnam veteran with 35 years of service, Hayes believed in tradition, discipline, and the proven ways of warfare. When news reached him about the female SEAL candidate, his reaction was swift and decisive. "This is nonsense," he declared to his assembled officers, his weathered face showing clear disapproval. "The SEALs are an elite fighting force, not some social experiment. These standards exist for a reason, and they cannot be compromised for the sake of political correctness." Master Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, who had overseen SEAL training for over a decade, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had seen Sarah's preliminary scores and physical assessments. The young woman had consistently outperformed many male candidates in several categories, particularly in marksmanship and tactical thinking. But voicing this opinion to General Hayes would be career suicide. The training compound itself was a testament to the brutal nature of SEAL preparation. Obstacle courses stretched across sandy terrain, climbing walls towered 30 feet high, and shooting ranges echoed with the constant crack of rifle fire. The infamous grinder, a large asphalt area where physical training took place, had broken the spirits of countless hopefuls over the years. Sarah's journey to this moment had begun in a small town in Oregon, where she grew up as the youngest of 4 siblings. Her father, a Marine Corps veteran, had taught her to shoot when she was 8 years old. Her mother, a nurse, had instilled in her the importance of helping others and never backing down from a challenge. When Sarah announced her intention to join the Navy and pursue SEAL training, her family offered unwavering support despite knowing the odds against her. The other candidates in her class were a diverse group of elite military personnel. There was Thompson, a former Army Ranger with arms like tree trunks. Martinez brought experience from Force Reconnaissance Marines. Johnson had distinguished himself as a Navy explosive ordnance disposal technician. Each man carried himself with a confidence born from previous military success, and each looked at Sarah with varying degrees of curiosity and doubt. The first major test came during the initial physical screening. Candidates had to complete a series of timed exercises, including a 500-yard swim, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and a 1.5-mile run. The minimum standards were demanding enough to eliminate many hopefuls before training even began. Sarah approached the swimming pool with calm determination. The chlorine smell mixed with morning ocean air as she prepared for the 500-yard swim. Unlike many of her male counterparts who relied on brute strength to power through the water, Sarah used technique and efficiency. Her stroke was smooth and rhythmic, cutting through the water with minimal splash. She completed the distance in under 13 minutes, well ahead of several other candidates. The push-up test revealed the first sign of the challenges she would face. While her form was perfect and her endurance impressive, the raw numbers couldn't match those of candidates with significantly more muscle mass. She managed 68 push-ups in the allotted time, meeting the minimum requirement, but falling short of the 100-plus performances turned in by some of the men. Word of the day's results quickly reached General Hayes. who reviewed them with growing irritation. He called Master Chief Rodriguez into his office that afternoon, the tension in the room palpable as the two men discussed the situation. "Rodriguez, I want you to understand something clearly," the general said, leaning back in his leather chair. "This base has maintained the highest standards for decades. We've produced warriors who've served with distinction in every major conflict since Vietnam. I will not allow those standards to be compromised by political pressure or social engineering." Master Chief Rodriguez nodded respectfully, though privately he wondered if the general was allowing personal bias to cloud his judgment. "Sir, the candidate met all minimum requirements for today's testing. Her swimming time was actually in the top 10% of all participants." General Hayes waved dismissively. "Meeting minimums isn't enough for the SEALs, and you know it. These people need to excel in every category. One weak link can get an entire team killed in combat." As evening fell over the base, Sarah found herself in the enlisted mess hall, eating dinner alone while conversations swirled around her. She could feel eyes watching her every move, evaluating whether she belonged among these elite warriors. The weight of expectation was enormous. She wasn't just representing herself, but potentially opening doors for future generations of women in special operations. The television in the corner was tuned to a news program discussing military integration policies. The volume was low, but Sarah caught fragments of the debate about women in combat roles. Politicians argued about equality and capability, while military experts debated the practical implications for unit effectiveness. She realized that her success or failure would be scrutinized by people far beyond this training facility. Sleep came fitfully that first night. The barracks were austere and functional, with narrow bunks and minimal personal space. The sounds of the base continued even after lights out. Distant aircraft engines, radio chatter, and the occasional bark of orders from night duty personnel. Sarah lay awake reviewing the day's events and mentally preparing for tomorrow's challenges. The next morning brought news that would change everything. General Hayes had decided to personally observe the training exercises. Word spread quickly through the candidate barracks, adding an extra layer of pressure to an already intense environment. Some of the men seemed energized by the prospect of impressing a high-ranking officer. Others appeared nervous about performing under such scrutiny. Sarah understood that this was more than just another training day. The general's presence meant her performance would be evaluated not just by training staff, but by someone with the authority to influence military policy. She had become a symbol whether she wanted to be or not, and every action will be magnified under the lens of political and military significance. The morning briefing was conducted by Lieutenant Commander Walsh, a lean man whose quiet demeanor concealed years of combat experience. He outlined the day's events with military precision, explaining that candidates would face a series of land navigation exercises followed by combat swimming drills. The standards were non-negotiable, and any candidate failing to meet them would be immediately removed from the program. As the candidates prepared their gear for the land navigation exercise, Sarah noticed the subtle changes in atmosphere created by the general's presence. Training instructors stood a little straighter, their commands carried extra sharpness, and there was an unmistakable tension in the air that hadn't existed the day before. The land navigation course covered 15 miles of challenging terrain, including sand dunes, rocky outcroppings, and dense brush. Candidates were given map coordinates and required to reach specific checkpoints within strict time limits while carrying full combat loads. The exercise tested not only physical endurance, but also mental acuity under stress. Sarah had always excelled at navigation and orienteering. Her methodical approach to map reading and terrain analysis served her well as she plotted the most efficient route between checkpoints. While some candidates relied on speed and aggression to power through the course, she used intelligence and planning to conserve energy for the longer journey ahead. General Hayes positioned himself at the third checkpoint, a rocky hill overlooking a valley where candidates would be visible for several hundred yards as they approached. He wore his dress uniform despite the field environment, a deliberate choice that emphasized the formal nature of his evaluation. Several junior officers flanked him, all watching intently as candidates emerged from the brush. The first few men arrived at the checkpoint in good time, breathing hard but maintaining military bearing as they reported to the checkpoint officer. Thompson powered up the hill with obvious strength, his large frame handling the rocky terrain with surprising grace. Martinez displayed the smooth efficiency of his Marine training, arriving precisely on schedule without apparent effort. When Sarah appeared in the distance, General Hayes leaned forward slightly, focusing his attention on her approach. She moved with steady determination across the valley floor, her smaller pack riding high and tight, her weapon held in proper position. Unlike some candidates who had taken more direct routes up steep slopes, she had chosen a longer, but more sustainable path that would preserve her energy for the remaining checkpoints. The real test came at the final checkpoint, where candidates faced an unexpected challenge. A simulated casualty evacuation scenario required them to carry a 180-pound dummy over 200 yards of rough terrain to a designated landing zone. This was where many female candidates in other military programs had historically struggled, and General Hayes watched with particular interest to see how Sarah would handle the challenge. Several of the larger candidates handled the dummy with relative ease, though all showed signs of fatigue by the end of the carry. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the problem differently than her predecessors. Instead of attempting to muscle the dummy onto her shoulders, she used proper lifting technique and leverage to position the weight optimally. Her progress was steady rather than fast, but she completed the carry within the required time limit. General Hayes said nothing during the exercise, but his expression revealed his thoughts. He had expected to witness a clear demonstration of the physical limitations that he believed made women unsuitable for special operations. Instead, he observed a candidate who met every requirement through skill and determination rather than raw strength. The day's events concluded with combat swimming drills in the Pacific Ocean. The cold water and strong currents added another layer of difficulty to an already challenging day. Candidates had to swim specific distances while fully clothed and equipped, then demonstrate water survival techniques. This was traditionally where many candidates, regardless of gender, discovered their limits. Sarah entered the water with confidence born from years of competitive swimming in high school and college. The heavy boots and clothing felt awkward initially, but she quickly adapted her stroke to accommodate the additional drag. The key was efficiency rather than speed, maintaining forward progress while conserving energy for the longer swims ahead. As the training day ended and candidates returned to barracks for equipment maintenance and preparation for the next day, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. Sarah had not only survived the day's challenges, but had performed competently in every event. Some of her fellow candidates began to view her differently, recognizing that her presence was based on capability rather than political maneuvering. General Hayes departed without speaking to any of the candidates, but his conversation with Master Chief Rodriguez that evening revealed his continuing concerns. The day's observations had challenged some of his assumptions, but had not fundamentally changed his position on women in special operations. The stage was set for an escalating confrontation between tradition and change, between institutional resistance and individual determination. Sarah's journey was far from over, and the most difficult tests still lay ahead. The third week of training brought Hell Week, the most notorious phase of SEAL preparation where candidates faced 5.5 days of continuous training with minimal sleep. The mortality rate for Hell Week was psychological rather than physical. Most candidates who quit did so because their minds broke before their bodies gave out. Sarah stood with the remaining candidates during the Sunday evening briefing that would mark the beginning of their trial by fire. Of the original 32 candidates who had started the program, only 19 remained. The others had been eliminated through injury, failure to meet standards, or simple recognition that they weren't cut out for the demands of special operations. Master Chief Rodriguez addressed the group with a gravity befitting the moment. "Gentlemen and lady," he began, acknowledging Sarah's presence with a slight nod, "what you're about to endure will test every aspect of your character. Physical strength alone will not carry you through the next 5 days. Mental toughness, teamwork, and sheer determination will determine who remains standing when this is over." The first night began with surf passage, where candidates had to carry heavy rubber boats over their heads while running through the Pacific surf. The water was frigid even by California standards, and the combination of salt, sand, and exhaustion created a misery that was difficult to imagine for those who hadn't experienced it. Sarah found herself assigned to Boat Crew 3, along with Thompson, Martinez, and two other candidates named Wilson and Burke. The boat weighed nearly 200 pounds when dry, and significantly more when soaked with seawater. The crew had to function as a unit, moving in synchronized steps while carrying the boat overhead for miles along the beach. The night wore on with a relentless series of exercises designed to push candidates beyond their perceived limits. Log PT involved teams of candidates lifting and maneuvering telephone poles in various configurations while instructors shouted commands and corrections. The logs were deliberately made slippery with seawater, and the exercises continued regardless of how many times candidates dropped them or failed to coordinate their movements properly. General Hayes made an unexpected appearance during the early morning hours, arriving at the beach just as the sun began to rise over the Pacific. He had been unable to sleep, his mind churning over the implications of Sarah's continued presence in the program. Part of him hoped to witness a dramatic failure that would validate his position on women in special operations. Another part recognized that his personal feelings might be clouding his professional judgment. The general positioned himself near the medical station where he could observe the candidates without interfering with training operations. Dr. Sarah Kim, the base medical officer, was monitoring the candidates for signs of hypothermia and heat exhaustion. Several had already been pulled from exercises for medical evaluation, though all had been cleared to continue after brief warming periods. "Doctor, what's your professional assessment of the female candidate's condition?" General Hayes asked, his tone carefully neutral. Dr. Kim glanced towards Sarah, who was currently struggling with her boat crew to carry their vessel up a steep sand dune. "Physiologically, she's handling the stress as well as most of the male candidates. Her smaller body mass actually provides some advantages in terms of heat regulation and energy efficiency. The bigger challenge for all of them is psychological endurance." As if summoned by their conversation, an incident unfolded that would become a defining moment of Hell Week. Boat Crew 3 was attempting to navigate through the surf zone when a larger-than-normal wave caught them off guard. The boat flipped, trapping Wilson underneath in the churning water. The crew had seconds to react before the situation became life-threatening. Thompson, the largest member of the crew, dove toward the overturned boat, but struggled against the powerful current. Sarah, whose swimming abilities had been noted from the first day of training, reached Wilson first. Using techniques learned from her water survival training, she managed to position herself to lift the edge of the boat while Thompson pulled Wilson clear of the danger. The entire incident lasted less than 30 seconds, but it demonstrated the kind of split-second teamwork that separated special operations personnel from conventional forces. More importantly for Sarah's situation, it showed her value as a team member rather than a liability requiring protection. General Hayes witnessed the rescue from his position on the beach, and his expression revealed the conflict between his preconceptions and the evidence before his eyes. Master Chief Rodriguez, who had been coordinating the exercise, jogged over to provide his assessment. "Sir, that was textbook water rescue procedure. The candidate demonstrated exactly the kind of quick thinking and selfless action we want to see in our personnel." The general nodded slowly, his weathered features showing signs of internal struggle. "Understood, Master Chief. Continue the exercise." The next phase of Hell Week involved extended land warfare exercises where candidates operated with minimal sleep and nutrition while completing complex missions. Teams were given objectives that required them to demonstrate proficiency in navigation, communications, weapons handling, and tactical movement. The scenarios were designed to simulate the mental fog and physical exhaustion that special operations personnel might face during extended combat operations. Sarah's team found themselves tasked with a reconnaissance mission that required them to observe and report on simulated enemy positions while remaining undetected for 12 hours. The mission site was located in rugged hill country east of the base, where teams could practice fieldcraft in realistic terrain. The challenge began during the approach march, when Wilson began showing signs of severe fatigue. His movements became clumsy and uncoordinated, and he struggled to keep pace with the team's movement schedule. Thompson wanted to push ahead and leave Wilson behind, arguing that the mission's success was more important than accommodating a weak team member. Sarah disagreed, proposing a different approach that would allow the team to complete their mission while ensuring Wilson's safety. She suggested redistributing Wilson's equipment among the other team members and positioning him in a security role that would be less physically demanding while still contributing to the mission's success. "We don't leave people behind," she stated firmly when Thompson protested the plan. "That's not what special operations is about. We find ways to succeed as a team, or we don't succeed at all." Martinez supported Sarah's position, recognizing the wisdom in her approach. Burke, the team's communications specialist, agreed to take on additional equipment to lighten Wilson's load. Even Thompson eventually acknowledged that the plan made tactical sense, though he grumbled about having to carry extra weight. The reconnaissance mission proceeded successfully, with the team gathering intelligence on target positions while remaining undetected by opposing forces. Wilson performed adequately in his modified role, and his security observations actually prevented the team from walking into a patrol that might have compromised their position. When the team returned to report their findings, their success was noted by the evaluation staff. More significantly, the way they had adapted to Wilson's difficulties while maintaining mission effectiveness demonstrated the kind of problem-solving ability that special operations required. The psychological pressure intensified as Hell Week continued. Candidates were subjected to interrogation scenarios where they had to resist revealing classified information while under stress. Sleep deprivation accumulated to dangerous levels, with most candidates operating on fewer than 4 hours of rest over the entire period. It was during this phase that Sarah faced her most direct confrontation with institutional resistance. A group of candidates from a previous class, who had failed SEAL training but remained at the base in other capacities, began making pointed comments about the program's standards being lowered to accommodate political pressure. The situation came to a head during a meal break when one of the former candidates, Petty Officer Stevens, made a loud comment about tourists playing soldier, while Sarah was within earshot. Several current candidates shifted uncomfortably, recognizing that the comment was intended to provoke a reaction. Sarah's response demonstrated the emotional control that special operations demanded. Instead of rising to the bait or seeking confrontation, she simply continued eating her meal while maintaining calm composure. Her lack of reaction deflated the intended provocation and actually earned respect from several of the men who had witnessed the exchange. Thompson, who had initially been skeptical of Sarah's capabilities, found himself grudgingly impressed by her self-control. "I probably would have punched that guy," he admitted quietly to Martinez. "She's got more discipline than I do in some situations." The final night of Hell Week brought the most challenging exercise yet, a simulated hostage rescue operation that required teams to demonstrate all the skills they had developed over the previous months. The scenario involved multiple phases including infiltration, target identification, coordinated assault, and extraction under time pressure. Sarah's team was assigned the most difficult target, a multi-story building where they had to locate and secure 3 simulated hostages while neutralizing an unknown number of opposing forces. The building was rigged with sensors and monitoring equipment that would record every aspect of their performance for later evaluation. The infiltration phase required the team to approach the target building without triggering perimeter alarms. Sarah's smaller size proved advantageous, as she was able to move through areas that would have been impossible for larger team members. Her reconnaissance identified a route that allowed the entire team to reach their assault position undetected. The assault itself was a masterpiece of coordination and timing. Each team member had specific responsibilities that had to be executed flawlessly for the mission to succeed. Sarah's role involved clearing the upper floors while the rest of the team secured the ground level and basement areas. Moving through the darkened building with night vision equipment, Sarah demonstrated the marksmanship skills that had been noted since her arrival at the base. She engaged multiple targets with precision and speed, neutralizing threats while avoiding civilian casualties. Her clearance of the upper floors was completed in record time without missing any hidden opponents. The hostage extraction phase required the team to move 3 simulated casualties from the building to a landing zone where they would be evacuated by helicopter. This involved carrying additional weight while maintaining security and coordination under time pressure. Sarah found herself responsible for one of the heavier casualties, a situation that would have been impossible to manage through strength alone. Instead, she used proper body mechanics and equipment to create a carrying system that distributed the weight effectively. Her progress was steady and controlled, contributing to the team's successful completion of the exercise within the allotted time. When the exercise concluded and teams assembled for debriefing, the evaluation results were announced publicly. Sarah's team had achieved the highest overall score, with particular recognition for their tactical innovation and teamwork under pressure. Individual performance evaluations showed Sarah ranking in the top 3 candidates across multiple categories. General Hayes attended the debriefing session, ostensibly to observe training methods, but actually to witness what he expected would be Sarah's eventual failure. Instead, he found himself confronting evidence that challenged every assumption he had made about women in special operations. The general's frustration was becoming apparent to those who worked closely with him. His aide-de-camp, Captain Morrison, had noticed increasing signs of agitation as Sarah continued to excel in training. The general's comments about maintaining standards had become more frequent and more pointed, suggesting that he was preparing to take direct action to resolve what he saw as an unacceptable situation. The confrontation that everyone sensed was building finally erupted during the Hell Week graduation ceremony. As candidates who had successfully completed the ordeal stood at attention to receive recognition for their achievement, General Hayes took the unprecedented step of personally addressing the formation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the assembled group, "you have completed one of the most demanding training programs in the world. However, completing Hell Week is only the beginning of your journey toward becoming Navy SEALs." His gaze moved deliberately across the formation before settling on Sarah. "The standards for this program exist for a reason. They have been proven in combat by generations of warriors who paid for these lessons with their blood. I want to be absolutely certain that every one of you understands the responsibility you're accepting." The speech continued for several more minutes, but the underlying message was clear to everyone present. General Hayes was drawing a line in the sand, and Sarah had become the focal point for his resistance to changing military traditions. As the ceremony concluded and candidates began to disperse, the stage was set for a direct confrontation between institutional authority and individual determination. Sarah had proven herself capable of meeting every challenge presented to her, but the most difficult test still lay ahead, confronting the resistance of those who refused to accept that capability could transcend gender. The weeks following Hell Week brought advanced training phases that would separate the truly elite from those who had simply survived the initial trials. Only 12 candidates remained from the original group, and the training had evolved from testing basic survival instincts to evaluating complex tactical skills and leadership abilities. Sarah found herself facing new challenges that went beyond physical endurance. The curriculum now included advanced weapons training, explosive ordnance handling, underwater demolitions, and small unit tactics. These skills required not only technical proficiency, but also the kind of split-second decision-making that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The underwater demolitions phase proved particularly demanding. Candidates had to demonstrate proficiency with various explosive devices while operating in zero-visibility conditions beneath the surface of San Diego Bay. The training began with basic procedures conducted in clear water under controlled conditions, then progressed to night operations in murky water where visibility was limited to inches. Sarah's background in competitive swimming provided advantages in water comfort and breath control, but the technical aspects of explosive handling required intense concentration and precise movements. Working with live explosives while wearing bulky diving equipment and managing limited air supplies created stress levels that eliminated several candidates who had performed well in previous phases. The training took place at a specialized facility where instructors could monitor every aspect of student performance. Underwater cameras recorded each exercise, and surface support teams tracked air consumption and safety protocols. The margin for error was essentially zero, as any mistake with explosives could be fatal regardless of the controlled training environment. During one particularly challenging exercise, candidates had to place explosive charges on simulated enemy infrastructure while avoiding detection by patrol boats equipped with sonar equipment. The scenario required them to approach targets underwater, attach charges with precise timing mechanisms, and exfiltrate without being detected. Sarah's approach to the exercise demonstrated the analytical thinking that had characterized her performance throughout training. Instead of relying solely on speed or aggression, she studied patrol patterns and identified windows of opportunity that minimized risk while ensuring mission success. Her patient observation paid off when she completed the exercise without triggering any detection systems. Thompson, who had become somewhat of an ally despite his initial skepticism, struggled with the patience required for covert operations. His natural inclination was to use strength and directness to overcome obstacles, but underwater demolitions demanded subtlety and precision. Sarah found herself in the unexpected position of mentoring a candidate who had initially questioned her presence in the program. "You try to muscle through this," she explained during a break between exercises. "These operations succeed through planning and execution, not raw force. Watch the patterns, identify the opportunities, then move with purpose." Her advice proved valuable, and Thompson successfully completed the exercise on his second attempt. The reversal of roles, the female candidate teaching tactical patience to a former Army Ranger, was not lost on the training staff who observed the interaction. General Hayes continued his pattern of unexpected appearances during critical training phases. His presence had become a source of tension among the training staff, who understood that their professional judgment was being scrutinized for any sign of favoritism or compromise standards. The general's questions had become more pointed, focusing specifically on Sarah's performance and the evaluation criteria being applied. Master Chief Rodriguez found himself walking a delicate line between honest assessment and institutional pressure. His professional integrity demanded that he evaluate all candidates fairly, but he also understood the career implications of crossing a general officer who had made his position clear. The situation was complicated by his growing recognition that Sarah was legitimately earning her place in the program. The psychological pressure on Sarah intensified as she became aware of the political dimensions surrounding her training. Media attention had begun focusing on her progress, with news reports speculating about the implications of the first woman potentially completing SEAL training. The attention was unwelcome and distracting, but it also meant that her success or failure would have consequences far beyond her personal military career. The advanced marksmanship phase brought new opportunities for Sarah to demonstrate her capabilities. SEAL operations required proficiency with a wide variety of weapons systems under challenging conditions. Candidates had to demonstrate accuracy with pistols, rifles, and specialized weapons while shooting from unstable platforms, in low-light conditions, and under time pressure. Sarah's natural shooting ability, developed during childhood hunting trips with her father, translated well to military applications. Her smaller frame actually provided advantages in some shooting positions, and her steady nerves under pressure resulted in consistently high scores across different weapons platforms. The most challenging marksmanship test involved long-range precision shooting from a moving boat. Candidates had to engage targets at distances exceeding 300 yards while compensating for wind, wave motion, and the movement of their shooting platform. The exercise simulated real-world scenarios where SEALs might need to provide precision fire support during maritime operations. Sarah approached the exercise methodically, taking time to study wind conditions and wave patterns before engaging targets. Her shots were deliberate rather than rapid, but her accuracy was exceptional. She successfully engaged 7 out of 8 targets, a performance that ranked among the best in the class and better than several candidates with prior military shooting experience. The success came at a crucial moment, as General Hayes had chosen to observe this particular exercise. He watched through binoculars from a command boat as Sarah engaged targets with precision that left little room for criticism. His frustration was becoming increasingly apparent to those around him, though he maintained military bearing while observing the training. Captain Morrison, who had served as the general's aide for over 2 years, recognized the signs of mounting pressure in his commanding officer. The general's sleep patterns had become irregular, and his normally methodical approach to decision-making showed signs of emotional influence. Morrison understood that the situation was approaching a crisis point that would require careful navigation. The close-quarters combat phase introduced scenarios that tested candidates' ability to operate effectively in confined spaces where conventional tactics might not apply. Training took place in specially constructed facilities that simulated ship interiors, building complexes, and underground installations. Candidates had to clear rooms, navigate obstacles, and engage targets while maintaining unit coordination. Sarah's performance in close-quarters combat revealed new dimensions of her tactical ability. Her smaller size allowed her to move through spaces that challenged larger candidates, and her quick reflexes proved valuable in scenarios requiring rapid target engagement. More importantly, she demonstrated the ability to make split-second decisions about when to engage targets and when to seek alternative solutions. One exercise involved clearing a simulated terrorist stronghold where some rooms contained hostages mixed with hostile targets. Candidates had to rapidly identify threats while avoiding civilian casualties, a scenario that replicated the most challenging aspects of real-world special operations. The exercise was scored based on speed, accuracy, and the successful protection of noncombatants. Sarah's approach emphasized target identification over speed, taking extra milliseconds to confirm hostile intent before engaging. Her final score showed slower overall times than some candidates, but perfect accuracy in distinguishing between threats and civilians. In real-world operations, such precision could mean the difference between mission success and international incident. The exercise debriefing highlighted the different approaches taken by various candidates. Some had prioritized speed and aggression, accepting higher risk of civilian casualties in exchange for faster clearance times. Others, like Sarah, had emphasized precision and positive target identification even when it meant slower overall performance. Master Chief Rodriguez used the debriefing as a teaching moment about the complexities of special operations. In the real world, he explained, mission success isn't just about completing objectives quickly. It's about completing them in ways that achieve strategic goals without creating bigger problems. Sometimes the ability to show restraint is more valuable than the ability to show aggression. General Hayes attended the debriefing session and listened to Rodriguez's comments with obvious displeasure. The emphasis on precision over aggression seemed to validate Sarah's performance approach, which contradicted his belief that physical superiority was the primary requirement for special operations success. The underwater infiltration exercises pushed candidates to their limits in yet another environment. Teams had to approach targets from underwater approaches, establish beachheads, and conduct operations while maintaining stealth and coordination. The training took place during night operations in conditions that simulated the most challenging aspects of real-world missions. Sarah's swimming abilities again proved valuable as teams navigated through strong currents and limited visibility conditions. Her role evolved naturally toward underwater reconnaissance, where her combination of swimming skill and tactical awareness made her particularly effective. She found herself leading portions of exercises that required detailed observation and reporting of target conditions. The teamwork aspects of underwater operations revealed how much the group dynamic had evolved since the beginning of training. Candidates who had initially questioned Sarah's capabilities now relied on her expertise in specific areas. Thompson had become particularly supportive, recognizing that their team's success was enhanced by the diverse skills that different members brought to complex operations. Martinez, whose Marine background emphasized unit cohesion, emerged as an informal leader who helped integrate Sarah's contributions into team planning and execution. His acceptance of her capabilities influenced other candidates who respected his military experience and judgment. Burke, the communications specialist, had developed effective working relationships with all team members, but found Sarah's methodical approach to problem-solving particularly valuable during complex planning phases. Her ability to analyze multiple variables and identify optimal solutions complemented his technical expertise in ways that improved overall team effectiveness. The small unit tactics phase represented the culmination of months of training, where candidates had to integrate all their acquired skills into complex operational scenarios. Teams were assigned missions that required them to demonstrate proficiency in infiltration, target engagement, information gathering, and extraction while operating independently for extended periods. Sarah's team drew an assignment that required them to conduct a multi-day reconnaissance operation in mountainous terrain. They had to gather intelligence on simulated enemy positions while avoiding detection by opposing forces equipped with advanced surveillance equipment. The scenario tested every aspect of their training from physical endurance to tactical expertise. The mission began with a night infiltration that required the team to move undetected across 15 miles of challenging terrain. Sarah's navigation skills and Thompson's physical capabilities combined effectively as they established waypoints and alternate routes that would allow rapid movement while maintaining stealth. The reconnaissance phase demanded patient observation and detailed reporting over a 72-hour period. Team members took turns monitoring target areas while others maintained security and communications. Sarah's role included detailed sketching of target layouts and identifying patterns in enemy activities that could be exploited during potential operations. The most challenging aspect of the mission came when the team discovered that their extraction point had been compromised by opposing forces. They had to identify alternative extraction sites while maintaining their reconnaissance mission and avoiding detection by increased enemy patrols. Sarah proposed a solution that involved splitting the team to maintain surveillance while a small element conducted reconnaissance of alternative extraction points. Her plan required precise coordination and timing, but offered the best chance of mission success while ensuring team safety. The execution of her plan demonstrated the leadership potential that training staff had been evaluating throughout the program. She coordinated team movements with precision, adapted to changing conditions, and maintained communication discipline while managing multiple operational variables simultaneously. When the exercise concluded successfully, the evaluation scores reflected not only individual competence, but also team effectiveness under challenging conditions. Sarah's contributions to mission planning and execution earned specific recognition from evaluation staff, marking her emergence as a candidate with leadership potential beyond basic operational capability. General Hayes received detailed reports on the exercise outcomes, including specific assessments of Sarah's performance and leadership contributions. The reports presented a picture that conflicted sharply with his expectations and challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying his opposition to women in special operations. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine not only Sarah's fate, but also the future direction of military integration policies. The general's frustration had reached levels that demanded resolution, while Sarah's continued success made it increasingly difficult to justify removing her from the program based on performance concerns. The final phase of SEAL training arrived with an atmosphere thick with tension and anticipation. Only 8 candidates remained from the original group, and each represented months of intense preparation and evaluation. For Sarah, reaching this point meant more than personal achievement. She had become a symbol of changing possibilities within the military establishment. General Hayes had grown increasingly agitated as Sarah's performance continued to meet or exceed standards throughout every training phase. His conversations with staff had become more pointed, and his questioning of evaluation criteria more aggressive. Captain Morrison recognized that his commanding officer was approaching a decision point that would have consequences far beyond this single training program. The final exercise was designed to test every skill candidates had developed over the previous months. Teams would conduct a complex multi-day operation that combined elements of reconnaissance, direct action, and personnel recovery. The scenario was based on real-world missions that SEAL teams had executed in various theaters of operation. Sarah's team received orders for what appeared to be the most challenging assignment. They had to infiltrate a defended compound, gather intelligence on high-value targets, neutralize specific threats, and extract simulated prisoners of war. The operation would take place over mountainous terrain during adverse weather conditions, adding environmental challenges to tactical difficulties. The planning phase revealed how much team dynamics had evolved since training began. Thompson, who had initially resisted Sarah's presence, now actively sought her input on tactical decisions. Martinez incorporated her reconnaissance expertise into mission planning. Burke relied on her analytical abilities to identify potential communication challenges and backup procedures. Master Chief Rodriguez observed the planning session with professional interest, noting how naturally Sarah had assumed leadership responsibilities in areas where her expertise was most valuable. Her contributions weren't the result of artificial accommodation, but organic integration based on demonstrated capability. Her tactical thinking is as good as any candidate I've evaluated, Rodriguez confided to Lieutenant Commander Walsh during a private moment. She identifies options that others miss and has the patience to develop comprehensive solutions rather than rushing to quick fixes. Walsh nodded in agreement, though both men understood the political pressures surrounding Sarah's evaluation. "The challenge isn't her performance," he replied quietly. "The challenge is convincing leadership that capability should override preconceptions." General Hayes made an unexpected decision to personally monitor the final exercise from the Field Operations Center. His presence added an extra layer of scrutiny that everyone understood was specifically focused on Sarah's performance. Training staff found themselves documenting every aspect of her contributions with unusual detail, knowing that their observations would be subject to intense review. The infiltration phase began during a cold, rainy night that reduced visibility and made movement treacherous. Teams had to navigate through forested terrain while avoiding detection by opposing forces equipped with night vision equipment and motion sensors. The conditions were deliberately challenging, designed to test decision-making ability under stress and adverse circumstances. Sarah's team took a more cautious approach than some others, prioritizing stealth over speed during their movement to the target area. Her navigation skills proved crucial as they avoided several detection points that compromised other teams. Their patient progress allowed them to reach their surveillance positions undetected while maintaining the energy and focus necessary for the operational phases ahead. The reconnaissance phase required detailed observation of the target compound over a 24-hour period. Teams had to identify guard patterns, structural vulnerabilities, and the locations of simulated prisoners without revealing their presence. The information gathered would determine the success or failure of subsequent operational phases. Sarah positioned herself in an observation post that provided optimal sight lines to the compound while maintaining concealment from roving patrols. Her detailed sketches and timing observations revealed patterns that would be crucial for planning the direct action phase. Her patience and attention to detail resulted in intelligence that was significantly more comprehensive than what other teams had gathered. Thompson and Martinez maintained security while Sarah conducted surveillance, a role reversal that demonstrated how much attitudes had evolved. The former skeptics now recognized her capabilities and trusted her judgment in situations where her expertise was most valuable. The direct action phase tested the team's ability to execute complex operations under time pressure. They had to neutralize guard positions, breach compound security, locate and secure prisoners, and establish conditions for extraction. Every movement had to be coordinated precisely to avoid alerting additional enemy forces. Sarah's role during the assault demonstrated the tactical flexibility that special operations demanded. Her smaller size allowed her to access areas that would have been challenging for larger team members, and her marksmanship skills proved crucial in engaging threats while avoiding civilian casualties mixed among the opposing forces. The prisoner recovery aspect of the mission created unexpected complications when the team discovered that one of the simulated prisoners was injured and unable to move independently. The scenario required them to modify their extraction plan while maintaining operational security and meeting time constraints. Sarah proposed a solution that involved creating an improvised stretcher system that would allow them to transport the injured prisoner without significantly slowing their movement to the extraction point. Her plan required precise coordination, but offered the best chance of successful mission completion without abandoning casualties. The execution of her plan required every team member to adapt their roles and responsibilities. Thompson used his strength to handle the heaviest portions of the carry, while Martinez managed security during vulnerable movement phases. Burke coordinated communications to ensure extraction timing remained feasible despite the complications. The extraction phase took place under simulated enemy fire, as opposing forces attempted to prevent the team's departure with their recovered prisoners. Candidates had to maintain defensive positions while coordinating with extraction aircraft under time pressure and hostile conditions. Sarah found herself in a position where her marksmanship skills were crucial for mission success. She provided precision fire that suppressed enemy positions while avoiding damage to the extraction helicopter. Her shooting was deliberate and accurate, neutralizing threats without wasting ammunition or creating unnecessary risk. When the exercise concluded and teams returned for debriefing, the evaluation results showed Sarah's team achieving the highest overall scores across multiple categories. Their mission planning, execution, and adaptation to unexpected complications had exceeded the performance of other teams with comparable or greater military experience. General Hayes attended the debriefing session with an expression that revealed his internal conflict between professional assessment and personal prejudices. The objective evidence of Sarah's performance was undeniable, but accepting it would require abandoning positions he had held throughout his military career. Master Chief Rodriguez presented the evaluation results with military precision, highlighting specific aspects of each team's performance without editorial comment. When he reached Sarah's contributions, his assessment was factual and comprehensive. Lieutenant Chin demonstrated tactical expertise, leadership ability, and operational flexibility consistent with SEAL operational requirements. The general's reaction was immediate and explosive. "Master Chief, I need to see you in my office immediately after this debriefing concludes." The confrontation that followed would become a defining moment not only for Sarah's military career, but for the broader question of women in special operations. General Hayes had reached the limit of his tolerance for what he perceived as a dangerous compromise of military standards. "Rodriguez, I want you to understand something clearly," the general began as soon as his office door closed. "I've watched this entire process unfold, and I'm convinced that we're making a serious mistake. This isn't about individual capability. It's about the integrity of our selection standards and the combat effectiveness of our units." Master Chief Rodriguez maintained his composure despite the obvious pressure. "Sir, with respect, Lieutenant Chun has met or exceeded every standard we've established. Her performance has been consistently superior across multiple evaluation categories. General Hayes waved dismissively. Performance in training scenarios doesn't necessarily translate to combat effectiveness. The physical differences are real, and they will matter when lives are on the line. I will not allow this program to be compromised by political pressure. The conversation continued for over an hour, with Rodriguez defending his professional assessment while Hayes argued for broader policy considerations. The fundamental disagreement centered on whether individual capability could override concerns about physical differences and unit cohesion. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself in an unexpected conversation with Captain Morrison, who had approached her during the post-exercise equipment maintenance. His manner was formal, but respectful as he asked to speak with her privately. "Lieutenant, I want you to understand that your performance throughout this program has been exemplary," Morrison began carefully. "However, there are factors beyond training results that may influence decisions about your future in the SEAL program." Sarah listened with growing understanding of the political dynamics affecting her situation. "Sir, are you suggesting that my performance isn't the primary consideration in evaluation decisions?" Morrison's response was diplomatic but clear. "I'm suggesting that you should be prepared for any outcome, regardless of your training performance. Sometimes institutional resistance to change can override individual achievement." The conversation revealed the complexity of the situation Sarah faced. She had proven herself capable of meeting every challenge presented to her, but success in training didn't guarantee acceptance into the operational community. The broader questions about military integration and institutional change were playing out through her individual case. That evening, as candidates prepared for the final evaluation phase, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and uncertainty. Sarah's fellow candidates had developed respect for her capabilities, but they also understood the political pressures that might override performance considerations. Thompson approached her during equipment preparation with an unexpected offer. "Chun, I want you to know that whatever happens with the evaluation, you've earned the right to be here. If there's anything I can do to support your case, just ask." Similar conversations took place with Martinez and Burke, revealing how much attitudes had evolved among those who had initially questioned her presence in the program. Their support was genuine and based on months of shared hardship and observed capability. The final evaluation board was scheduled for the following morning, when a panel of senior officers would review candidate performance and make recommendations for graduation from SEAL training. For most candidates, the evaluation was a formality based on documented performance throughout the program. For Sarah, the evaluation represented something much more significant. It would determine whether months of exceptional performance would be recognized with advancement to operational status, or whether institutional resistance would override individual achievement. General Hayes spent a sleepless night reviewing documentation and preparing for what he knew would be a career-defining decision. His opposition to women in special operations was based on decades of military experience and deeply held convictions about combat effectiveness. But the evidence of Sarah's performance challenged those convictions in ways that demanded honest evaluation. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test whether military institutions could adapt to changing realities or whether traditional resistance to change would prevail despite evidence of individual capability. The decision made in the coming hours would have implications far beyond Sarah's personal military career. The final evaluation board convened at 0800 hours in the base conference room, with 5 senior officers seated at a long table reviewing thick folders containing months of performance data. General Hayes occupied the center position, flanked by Colonel Matthews from Marine Special Operations, Captain Rodriguez from Naval Special Warfare, Commander Thompson for Naval Intelligence, and Master Chief Rodriguez representing the training cadre. Sarah stood at attention outside the conference room, knowing that the next hour would determine not only her military future, but potentially influence policy decisions affecting generations of female service members. The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but she had learned to channel pressure into focus during months of intense training. Master Chief Rodriguez presented each candidate's file methodically, beginning with overall performance rankings and proceeding through detailed assessments of specific capabilities. When he reached Sarah's evaluation, the room's atmosphere became noticeably more tense. Lieutenant Chen demonstrated exceptional performance across all evaluation categories. Rodriguez began, his voice steady despite the political implications. Her overall ranking places her third among the 8 remaining candidates, with particular strengths in tactical analysis, marksmanship, and leadership under pressure. General Hayes interrupted before Rodriguez could continue. Master Chief, let's address the fundamental question directly. In your professional opinion, is Lieutenant Chen physically capable of performing the same combat missions as her male counterparts? The question struck at the heart of the debate that had surrounded Sarah's training from the beginning. Rodriguez understood that his answer would be scrutinized and potentially career-defining, but his professional integrity demanded honest assessment. Sir, Lieutenant Chen has demonstrated the ability to meet every physical requirement we've established for SEAL operations. Her approach sometimes differs from larger candidates, but her results consistently meet or exceed our standards. In many scenarios, her capabilities complement team strengths in ways that enhance overall effectiveness. Colonel Matthews leaned forward to ask his own question. Master Chief, have there been any situations where you observed performance limitations that could compromise mission success or team safety? Rodriguez had anticipated this question and prepared his response carefully. Sir, every candidate has individual strengths and limitations. Lieutenant Chen's tactical thinking and precision skills have repeatedly contributed to team success in ways that offset any physical considerations. During the final exercise, her navigation prevented team compromise, her reconnaissance provided crucial intelligence, and her marksmanship was essential for mission completion. Captain Rodriguez, from Naval Special Warfare, posed a different question. What about unit cohesion and team integration? Has Lieutenant Chen's presence created any disruptions or complications in team dynamics? Actually, sir, the opposite has occurred, Master Chief Rodriguez replied. Initial skepticism from other candidates evolved into respect and effective teamwork as they recognized her capabilities. The teams she's worked with have consistently performed better than statistical averages for similar exercises. General Hayes listened to these exchanges with growing frustration. The objective evidence continued to support Sarah's qualification, but his concerns extended beyond individual performance to broader policy implications. He decided to address the issue directly. Gentlemen, we need to consider the precedent we're setting here. If we graduate Lieutenant Chen, we're essentially stating that physical differences between men and women are irrelevant for special operations. That opens the door to lowering standards across the board in the name of equality. Commander Thompson spoke up for the first time. Sir, with respect, the evidence suggests we're not lowering standards, but rather discovering that our assumptions about requirements may have been incomplete. Lieutenant Chen has met the same standards as everyone else. The debate continued for nearly an hour, with board members expressing varying perspectives on the implications of their decision. The discussion revealed fundamental disagreements about military integration, combat effectiveness, and the nature of special operations requirements. During a brief recess, Captain Morrison approached General Hayes with a private observation. Sir, I've been reviewing media coverage and congressional interest in this case. The political implications of our decision extend well beyond base operations. Whatever we decide will be scrutinized at the highest levels of government. General Hayes understood the warning, but remained committed to his position. Captain, my responsibility is to maintain the effectiveness of our military forces, not to accommodate political pressure. If that creates conflicts with Washington, so be it. When the board reconvened, General Hayes announced that he wanted to personally interview Sarah before making a final decision. This was highly unusual for evaluation proceedings, but his authority as senior officer made the request non-negotiable. Sarah entered the conference room and reported to the board with military precision. Her appearance was professional and confident despite months of intense physical and mental stress. The room fell silent as General Hayes prepared to address her directly. Lieutenant Shun, you've completed a training program that few men successfully finish. Your performance has been documented as exceptional by our evaluation staff. However, I have concerns about the broader implications of recommending you for SEAL operations. Sarah maintained her composure despite understanding that this moment would determine her future. Sir, I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have about my capabilities or performance. General Hayes studied her for a long moment before continuing. Lieutenant, do you honestly believe that you can perform every mission that might be assigned to a SEAL team without requiring accommodation or creating additional risk for your teammates? The question was designed to elicit either false confidence or admission of limitations. Sarah's response demonstrated the self-awareness and honesty that special operations demanded. Sir, I believe I can perform SEAL missions effectively within the parameters of my demonstrated capabilities. Every team member brings different strengths and limitations. My role would be determined by mission requirements and team needs, just as it would be for any operator. General Hayes pressed further. What about scenarios requiring maximum physical strength? Carrying wounded teammates over long distances? Hand-to-hand combat with larger opponents? Sarah's answer revealed the tactical thinking that had characterized her performance throughout training. Sir, special operations succeed through planning, precision, and teamwork rather than individual physical dominance. There are scenarios where my capabilities might be limiting, just as there are scenarios where my skills provide advantages that others cannot offer. The honesty of her response seemed to surprise General Hayes, who had expected either denial of limitations or overconfident claims about equality. Instead, he encountered a realistic assessment of capabilities and tactical understanding of how diverse skills contribute to team effectiveness. Master Chief Rodriguez observed the exchange with professional interest, recognizing that Sarah was demonstrating the kind of mature judgment that distinguished exceptional candidates from merely competent ones. Her ability to acknowledge limitations while maintaining confidence in her overall capabilities showed the self-awareness that special operations demanded. The board members asked additional questions covering various aspects of her training and performance. Sarah's responses were consistently thoughtful and honest, demonstrating not only technical competence, but also the mental flexibility that challenging operations required. When the formal interview concluded, General Hayes called for a private consultation among board members while Sarah waited outside. The discussion that followed was intense and wide-ranging, covering everything from tactical considerations to policy implications. Colonel Matthews argued strongly for Sarah's qualification based on documented performance. Gentlemen, we've subjected this candidate to the same rigorous evaluation as everyone else. She's met every standard and demonstrated capabilities that enhance team effectiveness. Denying qualification based on gender rather than performance would be both unfair and counterproductive. Captain Rodriguez supported this position while acknowledging practical concerns. We need to consider operational integration carefully, but Lieutenant Shun has proven she belongs in this community based on demonstrated capability. Commander Thompson focused on broader implications. This decision will be studied and analyzed for years to come. We need to ensure that our reasoning is sound and defensible based on objective evidence. General Hayes found himself increasingly isolated in his opposition. The evidence presented by training staff, combined with Sarah's performance during the interview, made it difficult to justify denial of qualification based on capability concerns. The moment of truth arrived when General Hayes realized that his personal convictions were being overcome by professional evidence. The months of observation and evaluation had produced a record of achievement that could not be dismissed without abandoning the merit-based principles that he claimed to defend. As the board members returned to their formal positions, the atmosphere in the room had shifted noticeably. General Hayes appeared to have reached an internal resolution about the decision he had been struggling with for months. Gentlemen, he began slowly, After careful consideration of all available evidence, I find myself compelled to acknowledge that Lieutenant Chun has met every standard we have established for SEAL qualification. The admissions seemed difficult for him, but his professional integrity ultimately overcame his personal resistance to change. However, he continued, I want to be absolutely clear that this decision is based solely on demonstrated performance and cannot be interpreted as lowering standards or changing requirements. Master Chief Rodriguez formally presented the board's unanimous recommendation for Sarah's graduation from SEAL training. The decision represented not just individual achievement, but a watershed moment in military integration policy. The graduation ceremony took place the following week with unprecedented media attention and senior military leadership present from Washington. Sarah stood with 7 other newly qualified SEALs, representing months of shared hardship and mutual respect earned through demonstrated capability. General Hayes personally presented Sarah with her SEAL Trident, the symbol of qualification that she had worked so hard to earn. As he pinned the insignia to her uniform, he spoke quietly enough that only she could hear his words. Lieutenant, you've proven me wrong about some things, and I respect that. But remember that earning this pin is just the beginning. The real test comes in operational units where everything you've learned will be put to ultimate trial. Sarah's response was equally quiet but confident. Sir, I understand the responsibility that comes with this qualification. I won't let down the standards or the people who believed in giving me this opportunity. The ceremony concluded with the traditional SEAL prayer and formal recognition of the new graduates. As the formation dispersed and families celebrated with their newly qualified operators, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The months ahead would bring new challenges as she integrated into operational units and faced the realities of special operations missions. But she had proven that capability could transcend traditional limitations and that individual excellence could overcome institutional resistance. Her success opened doors for future generations of women while demonstrating that military effectiveness was enhanced rather than compromised by recognizing and utilizing all available talent. The general who had grabbed her hair in a moment of institutional prejudice had ultimately become the officer who recognized her achievement and potential. The story of Sarah Chen's journey through SEAL training became a landmark case study in military integration and institutional change. More importantly, it established the principle that qualification for special operations should be based on demonstrated capability rather than preconceptions about gender, race, or background. Years later, as other women followed the path she had opened, Sarah's legacy was not just personal achievement, but proof that military excellence could be found in unexpected places when institutions were willing to look beyond traditional assumptions and evaluate individuals based on their actual capabilities and contributions.